Yeah, so we're into the Derech Hashem, which we've, I've left it for quite a while already. I think we're on Per Gimel, Siman Yud. So I'm going to begin there, And the Ramchal continues in terms of the Olam Hazeh, Olam Haba, and so on. And I think I had once mentioned that what is the essential, what does the Mersham want really? What is the essential task in a certain sense? And the idea to that really is that there are several different aspects of the creation. If you want to look at it, there are different dimensions of creation. The first one is the dimension of divinity, or God. Whoever he is. There's a reality called God. That's one type of reality. Second type of reality is called Olam Haba. Now, Olam Haba is a spiritual reality. So, in many ways, that's what it is. But the spiritual reality comprises really two subsections. One is the spiritual worlds, which are the worlds, let's say, of the Malachim. In Kabbalah, it would be what's called Atzilus and Bria and Yitzira and so on. They're certainly spiritual. We have no ideas about what laws govern these realities. We don't know what type of beings they are, but they have their own physics, so to speak, their own realities. But even them, they don't know what Olam Haba is. Nobody knows what Olam Haba is. So therefore, we can subdivide spiritual reality into two types. One is spiritual reality, which is deficient, or the first one. And the second one is Olam Haba, which is also spiritual, but it is so unlike the first one, that even Malachim have no idea of what Olam Haba is. Because it says, Ayin lo yirah, the eye has never beheld what is stored for the righteous in the future. Now what that means is that it's not only our eyes, nobody knows. Malachim don't know. If you ask them what's up ahead, what's Olam Haba about, they have no idea at all. So therefore the spiritual domain or dimension, or reality, can be subdivided into two. There is the deficient spiritual universe, and then there's the perfected spiritual universe, which is Olam Haba. So therefore, the second aspect of reality is spiritual, as I just said, and it is subdivided into two. But besides that, there's also what's called a physical reality. A physical reality, in which, of course, obviously, is the physical universe. And therefore, that concept of physicality, obviously, is different than spirituality. That is obviously the world that we inhabit. So that's the third reality. We have the divine reality, God. We have the spiritual reality. And then we have the third reality, which is the physical reality. But there's also a fourth reality. That's the world of the Satan. Tumah. It's the world of the Satan. It's also reality, So in a certain sense, you could say it's spiritual, But it is a reality which is so different, really, even from the Ruchnius, that we can call it, a different type of reality, so on. And the Masham created these realities in order to lead ultimately to a certain direction. And the reality that the Masham wants ultimately is the Olam Haba reality, which will mean that ultimately speaking, the reality of the Satan, the worlds of what's called a Klippa or Tumah, will be destroyed, utterly destroyed. And the physical reality will be transformed. The essential task of a Jew is to mezakech, or purify a physical reality into a spiritual one. That is his job. So the reality of the Satan will be destroyed. The reality of the physical universe will be transformed. And the only reality that will exist will not be the spiritual reality, the first type, but the second type. And that type, as I once said, is that it's infinite, or rather we don't really know what that reality is. I once spoke about what I think, as far as I'm concerned, what it is. You could recall that? Recall what I said? Yeah?
It's more existence.
Yeah. Fundamentally what it is, we know that there's only two things that... Everything has existence. What exists is the essence of a thing. But every essence has existence. Like this table. This table has existence. We don't know what that is. We know the essential attributes of this table, non-essential. And we know that it has existence. But we know that in the sphere of essences, there are many different kinds. In the sphere of existence, there isn't kinds of existence. Existence does not have a degree. Well, he exists more, you know. So therefore, as far as we know, existence is a dichotomous concept. It either is or it's not. There's no in-betweens. However, since the essential relationship that the Derech Hashem has with us is existence itself, he is our existence. Clearly then, the more you're dovek to him, the greater is your existence. Therefore we can say that Olam Haba is a place in which you can actually find existence itself intensified. Degrees. Now we don't know what that means. You know, we don't know what it means to exist more. We have no idea, you see.
And we know, like healthier, happier is already more, just not a small degree. It's a much greater degree, but that's already...
Well, health is not it's not more existing. It means whatever existence you have, you know, you're better able to handle it in a certain sense. We don't know. You exist whether a person's sick or not. He exists. There's no change in his existence. There could be a change in the state of his health, you know. But whether he's sick or not, he exists. That's the end of it, and so on, you know. We don't know what it means to exist more. But Olam Haba, since, like I said, the essential relationship that we have with the Derech Hashem is that he is the source of our existence. Therefore, he is existence. And therefore, Dvekus, which is what occurs in Olam Haba, right, the greater Dvekus, means that we are more connected to a being that is existence per se. That would mean that we have a greater degree of existence. That's why it says, Ayin Rosso, that the eye has never beheld. But doesn't say the brain cannot comprehend, Moyach Roy Maven, what is held up in Olam Haba. Because we can understand, we don't know what we've never experienced it, but I can understand the concept of a greater degree of existence, although I have no idea what that means, you see. And obviously, to have a greater kind of existence is the greatest of all states. That's really what it is. Now, does that mean that in Olam Haba there won't be ta'anugim, pleasure? Of course there'll be pleasure. The concept of pleasure will always be. But the pleasure, the essential pleasure apparently will be that you exist more. And apparently that is an incredible pleasurable state. You see. So that's an idea of what Olam Haba probably is.
You're saying existence is a separate space from spiritual?
No, everything has existence. No, even spiritual. Yeah. The only thing is, there's no such thing as more existence. Therefore, essentially, those realities which I have mentioned, like I said, the world of the Yetzer Hara, which is the world of the Klipa, Tumah, will be eradicated. The world of Geshem will be transformed. And the only thing that will be left is Ruchni, but not even Ruchni in the spiritual sense, it will be an oilam habo ruchni. So in any case, that is the essential idea of a Jew. And the way to transform reality is how? Is by bringing down a greater, what's called hashpo or shefa of the Rebbeinu Shalom. You need to bring down more, and so on. And that's really what the mitzvahs do. They bring down a greater amount of shefa. And therefore reality is changed. So this is an important introduction before we get into Ramchal, which Ramchal is about to speak about. So the Ramchal says, this is in Perek Gimel, Klal Yud, or Siman Yud, that the essential reward, that means when people receive this reward, will be after Tchias HaMesim, not before. And what Ramchal says, also interesting enough, is that in Olam Haba, you have the Guf and the Neshama. Both. Most people think that in the world of spiritual Olam Haba, there will only be the Neshama. Well, that's incorrect. You'll have the Guf and the Neshama. However, the Guf, the body that we have now, is not going to be the same body that we have now. It will be a body that is transformed without any contaminant, physical contaminant. And we don't know what that is. In other words, it's almost like the body is not neshama, but then again, it's not body either. It's some type of a midway. You know, in other words, you will have a neshama, obviously, but the body, and we'll see that the neshama is what does it. The neshama will mezakech the guf. The neshama will purify the body of its geshem, leaving the body spiritual to the extent that we understand now. So it's sort of like, it's not physical, okay, but it's spiritual, but not like the spirituality of the neshama, which is very interesting, because I think the Rambam says that the neshama is the only thing that will be in Olam Haba, or in Olam Haba itself.
So he disagrees with the Rambam?
What was that?
He disagrees.
Well, it's not Ramchal, it's the Ari. This is basically coming from the
We
Ari.
don't say that the goof also goes there, and the goof is a source of simcha for the neshama.
Yes, yeah, we're going to get to that, yeah.
But
That's what I'm saying.
The Ari
The
argues
guf
with the Rambam.
the guf is Olam Haba. That's the Chiddush. The fact that the guf arises after Tchiyah, that we know. After the resurrection of the dead, the guf gets up, that we know. But once the world is removed, that the guf should also be in Olam Haba is incredible. You see. So the way it does that is that the neshama, which we will see, removes the physicality of the body itself. So it's going to be something like a spiritual entity, but not the same type of spiritual entity as the neshama. That's what we're going to
Can I
see.
just ask for quick?
Yeah.
The reward for mitzvahs doesn't happen until after the resurrection. of
The what?
dead. The reward for mitzvahs, did you say,
Does
doesn't
not happen.
until after the resurrection of the dead? Is that what you said?
Really, it doesn't happen until Olam Haba.
So the thought that we have now that if someone has an award this evening, they have the scores from something or they merited it from doing something, is that a false thought? How does that play? You know, let's say I have the opportunity to do a good deed tomorrow, and I'm saying I have a big interview a week later, I want to be good this week, I want good things to happen, or if someone has a medal. Is that a false thought that we can influence that next week I'll have a great week on an important day or something? Because if we try to elevate ourselves, we don't see the results of that.
No.
So then that
No. We do see results, but it's not an Olam Haba result. You see.
Don't we get reward now with this?
No, because the nature of the reward of a mitzvah, okay, is not something that can be had in a physical universe. It's not possible. The reward that the neshama receive, okay, is a reward that is devoid of any physical universe. You see. So therefore, this is not a place that you can have that reward. It's obviously not a physical reward. It is a reward that a person can only experience in a spiritual universe. And since we are not in a spiritual universe, we cannot receive that reward.
So the good things that we think we have today as we sit here, how is that derived or merited or earned?
So therefore, when it says Schar mitzvah b'chai al moleka, that the reward of a mitzvah in this world does not exist, obviously what that means is that it exists only in Olam Haba. So then what does exist? What does exist, okay, is greater opportunity to do more mitzvahs. You see. You know, it's like a guy's, he's a teller in a bank, you know, so he makes a certain amount of money. But let's say that teller does a really great job, and that teller is elevated to be a VP, vice president. Does the vice president still have to work? Yes. But the person would rather work as a vice president than a teller. You see. In other words, the opportunity has been enormously increased because the money is more, the covet is more, the honor is more, the recognition is greater. All of this, you know, it's more pleasurable for the person. Yet at the same time, the person has to work. Well, yeah, that's different because, you know, but the essentially what is going on here is that the opportunities to get reward is improved. That's the reward, so to speak. You know, but it's not the etzem reward that a person receives as a result of a mitzvah. That can only be happening in Olam Haba.
You see a bigger expense allowance.
Big expense allowance, more salary, greater benefits, more vacation pay. You know, I mean, there's a lot of goodies, obviously, that come with a greater promotion. But in the end, you still have to come to the bank, 9 o'clock, and you know, put your time slot, whatever it's on, you know. It's just that it's more pleasurable, you know. But it cannot be the ultimate reward, because a physical universe cannot bear that. Yeah. Anyway, now in the future world, which is interesting, that the reward that a person has in the future world, they're not equal. A person is not equal. There's certain fundamental ideas that happen in the future world. One is that there is no equality in the future world. What happens to you in the future world totally depends on the amount of input that you did. The amount of input in terms of mitzvahs, good deeds, chesed, Torah, whatever you want to call, right? And therefore, each person, therefore, as a result of that, will have different levels of input. His stature or station will be completely different, you know, because of that and so on. So that's an important consideration. Another very important idea is that everybody will grow. There's no such, in other words, everybody starts off at what's called a baseline. And that baseline depends on how much, what you did. It depends on how much you accomplished, A, and how much effort you expended, B. And what happens is that you get a certain baseline. That's how you start. And from that baseline, you begin to grow, you see. And therefore, each person starts out at a certain baseline, depending on what he did. There's an enormous amount of, obviously, determining factors that go into what your status, what your baseline is in Olam Haba. How much you accomplished, what you avoided, you know, your Mesiras Nefesh, your Yegiyah. There is so much that is inputted or that determines what your baseline is in Olam Haba. So as a result of that, really no two people are equal. But what it does do is establishes a baseline, and then everybody grows more and more, and it's an infinite growth. It's amazing that there can be a place, you know, and it's an infinite growth, and there's no real time. It's hard to know what the time thing is. But imagine from nanosecond to nanosecond, you will grow. That's the amazing thing. It's hard to understand what kind of experience that is, Could you imagine at 12 o'clock you're going to have one experience, and at 12:01 it's another experience, which is infinitely more than at 12 o'clock. And then at 12:02, you're experiencing something which is infinitely later than at 12:01. You figure that, how long can this incredible thing go on? But it doesn't stop. It's hard for us to believe that how can good be infinite? Because in this world, good is what? Good is always
Limited.
what?
Limited.
It's limited, and after a while, the good times are over. That's it. What?
Is there a
Oh, but in
social
Olam Haba, you don't get bored. You see, that's part of being good. You don't get bored because here, I don't care what you do. After a while, you get bored. You become saturated, and the mind says, and then whatever. But in Olam Haba, there's no such thing as boredom. And there's no such thing as routine. It just goes on and on. And it's like you can't believe what's going on. It's like every other minute you're in a state of shock. You can't believe. And it's got to end sometime or diminish, But it doesn't. It never diminishes. It grows from minute to minute. And it never ends. And it's infinite. It's like, how do you even measure something like that? You can't. You can't measure something like that. And so on. But whatever it is,
Why does it grow in magnitudes of infinity?
because there's no measure in Olam
There's no measure.
Haba. There's no measure. Here we could say, there's no such thing as quantity in Olam Haba. Here we have quantity and qualities and so
Everything is unmeasurable, even the increments.
on. Even the increments are not measurable, We don't really know what they are. There's no quantity in Olam Haba, So in a certain sense, what you will experience at 12:01 is infinitely greater than 12 o'clock. So you cannot imagine if it's infinitely greater, or...
You see, it's a world without measure, so...
It's a world without measure, so so what happens at 12:02? What happens at 12:30? It's like, you can't believe what's happening at 12:30, what?
If there is a 12:30.
Well, I'm using physical terms, and so on, so...
So basically time, even though it's really a part of this world, remains.
No.
Yeah, well, in a certain sense, there is look...
Because time has changed, essentially.
Obviously, if you grow, growth always means what?
Time.
Growth means two things. Growth means change, and it means time. It means past and present and future. Or else how could you grow if there's no past, present, and future? What does it mean? Growth means that there's a future and there's a change. So, obviously I'm using terms that are physical terms. But whatever happens here, we use those terms. Is that this is
It could be something
infinite
different,
growth.
just we don't understand.
What?
We're talking in terms of Olam Hazeh, but it really could be something beyond our comprehension.
Yeah, it
It's
is. Yeah.
including quote-unquote growth.
Yes. They say, which is interesting, that if you were able to put into a capsule all the pleasure that you had in one day, then you put into that capsule the entire year. Then imagine if you were able to put in that capsule the totality of every pleasurable experience you ever had for an entire year. And then you put an entire lifetime, right? Imagine putting that in a capsule. So imagine if you took that capsule and you swallowed it, you would feel something which is unbelievable, right? Now imagine if you could take that capsule and you could put the pleasure of the totality of all mankind. In other words, take the amount of pleasure that mankind has experienced now and in all the years of Olam Hazeh. That's a lot of stuff, Even though they say that this world is basically what? Is an island of pleasure, a sea of pain. You ever heard that one? It's like little islands of pleasure in a vast sea of pain. But without that, right? Because it's, But imagine if you took all the islands of pleasure of all mankind that ever existed, right? And you were able to box it in, that would not be equal to 1 second of Olam Haba. And that's pretty good. That's really pretty good. That's what they said, So, and that's 1 second of Olam Haba. Now imagine Olam Haba, every minute is infinitely greater than the next minute. So of course it's Ayin Raw, so of course we cannot comprehend what that means, So
Will we have any comprehension, any semblance of us right now? I mean, how would we know? That would just be the way it is, like the Zen thing. You're just there. Would we know, wow, this is much better than what we used to have on Earth?
Yeah, oh yeah.
We'll have that.
Yeah.
Is there a social setting there? In society? Where you just
I mean, is there marriage?
No, I mean, is there some
Is
sort
there
of
kids?
communal-
Is there nightclubs? I'm like, what?
Is a shul, like,
Are there shuls? Wow, is it a shul,
Is there some semblance of community or other, or it's just your own personal experience?
You mean, are we gonna have a government or something like that?
It doesn't say.
How are you
community.
the other Michelle floating around or whatever,
Yeah, oh yeah.
Would you know who they were? Would you
Yes,
know?
yeah. So all have a placard that says, I was, and so, you meet your wife.
Well, if we're mostly Gilgul, and how do you handle that at family functions and things like that? Your brother, you could have a gazillion brothers and sisters.
Oh yeah, you probably would have to see your brother.
Further, who knows?
You're gonna meet all the wives, all the Gilgulim.
And the
And
world.
the Gedulim.
Could you imagine being confronted by all the wives?
And child support.
You know what the problem with that? You imagine being confronted with all the wives and so on and so forth, and they're all screaming at you for what you did to them, right? But you know why that can never exist? Because that wouldn't be
Pleasure
a
for
problem.
them, it was pleasure here for them.
No, that would be Gehenna. So how could you have that kind of Gehenna? Yeah. No, everything obviously has very peaceful. Everybody has to love each other.
I mean, you meet them, but they cannot tell you anything.
What? You need them?
You meet them, but they cannot tell you anything.
No, they can't tell you anything. That's probably why it's Olam Haba. Forget about everything else. But anyway, the main idea is that it's a dimension that we cannot possibly imagine, and so on, and each person will experience this individually. It's within you yourself, you will experience this dvekus. It'll be internal, as they say, inherent, intrinsic, the experience itself. So as such, I don't think you can even convey what you're feeling to the next guy. See, so you don't really know. Everybody's walking around with this incredible beatific smile on his face. And everybody's just enormously happy, and you don't know, but you don't know what the guy's experiencing, But remember, each one starts at a certain baseline, and then you grow from that baseline. Then there's growth. So you don't really know what the other guy is experiencing. So therefore, there can never be any jealousy, because everybody's got this smile on the face. It's the same smile, you know what I'm saying?
What do you do with the fact that all the regret? The person says, he's on level A when he really could have reached to level B.
That's the busha.
So you're saying even in Olam Haba there's busha?
No, there can't be, or else you could never.
So what happens to the busha?
It's not an Olam Haba, it's a Gehenna.
So what happens to that busha?
Well, that's removed. You have to remember one thing, which is important. For instance, let's say the concept of evil.
Okay.
Ra, Imagine you're in Olam Haba and you're remembering all the evil that happened. Well, that would be an incredible what?
Tsar.
That would be incredible tsar. So how could that be an Olam Haba? So apparently what probably happens is that the Ribono Shalom removes the concept from existence. So you can't think about that. Remember,
What about seeing
the only concepts you can think about.
You can understand why it was just, you have an understanding.
Yeah, but like I say, what the Ribono Shalom probably does is he removes many concepts from existence.
Well, that just sounds like a lobotomy just to get rid of the symptom.
What?
It sounds like a lobotomy to get rid of the symptom. That doesn't sound like a profound actual.
We have that
Intrinsic-
forgetfulness. People
It's either that, A, there's another possibility. Okay?
Okay.
So the first possibility is that the Moshe will remove all these ideas that can create fear, anxiety, embarrassment, and so on.
Okay.
The second possibility is that in that world there are no questions. Everything is understood to be toiv moed. That's why it says kishem shemavochem al hara, excuse me,
Toiv.
al toiv mavochem al hara. Why? Because we don't see that. We to us there's good and evil, but at the level of the Moshe, there's not such thing as evil, although we don't really understand that. At his level, everything is incredible. Everything is hatova.
At the end of the day, I had the resources to accomplish A, and I accomplished B, and that manifests in my status in the life.
Yeah.
So, in front of me every single day is I may have level 1 zillion, but I could have had level 2 zillion.
But it could be that you're so into experiencing the pleasure of that you don't even think about it. And who cares what I could have done? Right now, it's unbelievable. You know what I'm saying? You know, I mean, so imagine you're in the market, right? The stock market, right? And all of a sudden, in one day, you made $1 billion. Now you can sit down and say, you know, I could have made two. $1 billion is so beyond what you could even do it. You really can't could have made two? Hey, who cares? You see what I'm saying? So the whole thing is what's called moot. It's irrelevant what you could have done, because what you're getting now is so beyond what could have happened. What happened? It's so beyond what you can expect that who cares if there's more? You see. So that's another possibility of what happens in Olam Haba. You know. But one thing is clear: you cannot in any way suffer from what you did in Olam Hazeh.
Is it possible
Because
that
then it
a
wouldn't be
person,
Olam Haba.
is it possible that through Yisurim, in Gehenna or wherever it is, that he sort of makes up for all that? In other words, he could have accomplished A, he accomplished B instead. But it could be that he sort of gets, accomplishes level, the level he should have gotten to through Yisurim and Gehenna or whatever, and then when he's in Olam Haba already, then he is where he was, what it was supposed, where he had the potential to be.
No, it doesn't work that way.
Doesn't work that way.
No.
You
It
got
doesn't,
your-
it doesn't balance out, you know, it's you did a certain amount of good and evil, so it detracts from the good. No. You need to compensate for the evil, get rid of it, and you get all the good that you did. There's no such thing as, well, subtract the evil from the good, and instead of walking away.
No, I meant that a person's in Gehenna,
Yeah.
and he through Yisurim, Hashem makes sure he gets to where he was supposed to have been. Because he only accomplished half of what he's supposed to do, and Hashem says you'll accomplish the rest through tremendous Yisurim in Gehenna or whatever.
No, Gehenna,
Right.
Gehenna is only kapara, there's no...
So I'm saying kapara for what he did, what he felt.
Yeah, so you remove the
there's no accomplishment. There's only restitution.
Correct, yeah. The only place you can accomplish is this world.
So Yisurim is only to get rid of the bad. So the whole so the tikkun, when Rabbi said a tikkun is that Yisurim is a tikkun device, that's only to be misaking what you messed up.
Basically, yeah. Well, it's not really clear, but yeah. But anyway, the upshot of all this, yeah, what?
The Gemara says that there is mechava mitzvah.
What's that?
And the Gemara says the site that on there could be mechava mitzvah.
And there can be
Extinguish a mitzvah.
extinguished or mechaber. I wasn't, yeah.
Why would that be? Mitzvah is on itself, and out there is by itself. What's the? You just said that.
Well, probably because you can have charot on the mitzvah. Because there's certain averes that a person does, you know, where the person is mischaret on the mitzvah itself. So that can remove a mitzvah.
Rabbi Yonah, I think, explains that Avera Mechava Mitzvah means it's just the ore of the mitzvah is like covered by in this world, is covered by the
In this
Avera.
world, yeah.
And then once we remove the Avera, we get the hashpah of the mitzvah.
Yeah, but in another sense, if you have charota, you regret having done a mitzvah. That can be Mechaber Mitzvah in that sense, you know.
The righteous of the other nations
Anyway.
inherit the world to come, right?
Yes.
So I've heard people explain that to me, like for each tzitzis ring, there's 70 members of the other nations that will be like our servants. What do you need servants for if everything is on such an ecstatic level? What's their experience going to be like? Will they be ecstatic? Or
No, you're not going to have servants in Olam Haba. That's only in your Moshe Mashiach.
Okay.
No, in Olam Haba there's no servants. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to hire any Mexicans for those who are today, you know. No, there's no maid service, you know.
So their situation based on the 7 Noahide laws and all of that.
Yeah, a goy can have a Olam Haba. Why not? Anybody can. In fact, a goy could be a Navi. It says that it says that in Toned Velio, anybody can be a Navi if they worked at it and they achieved a certain status. You know. But that refers to that every Jew will have whatever, 7 or 10, you know, that's only in Moshe Mashiach, not in Olam Haba. Olam Haba is a whole different situation, and so on and so forth, you know. Let's face it, it's nice to look forward to it. You know, that after all this is over and done with, that there's a place that there's an infinite upward growth, upward bound, you know. But as I said, so that the level, the base level, is dependent on what you did, accomplished, and also the effort. And a lot of people don't realize that the effort in a certain way is greater than the achievement. Anybody know why? It says in the Gemara, from Tsaro Agra, from Tsaro, according to the Tsar, right? The pain, whatever, and so on. Agra is the reward. Why? You may ever wonder why?
Isn't success only up to Hashem? You can only do the effort.
No, but why is it that the agra, the reward, it depends on the effort? Why? No, the amount of effort. Why is that? Because the Ramchal is saying you also have that it depends on the achievement also, which you hope you lead to. You know. You know what? Because in the end, what is the essential mechanism of the mitzvah? What's it all about, really? What a mitzvah really is a wherewithal or a hechetimsa. It is an instrument whereby you deny self. Why? Because the denial of self is an expression of Ein Od Milvado. It's really what it is. Imagine a guy sleeping, you know, and it's 6 o'clock in the morning, and it's in the middle of the winter, and it happened to snow last night 2 feet. You know, and all of a sudden his alarm clock rings, which means, Minyan! And your wife is banging down the door and saying, hey, come on, you gotta go to Minyan and all that, right? Okay? And you're having now a battle. What's the battle? Here's the battle. The battle is a battle of act. Should I get up and go to Minyan, or should I remain, you know, or should I daven at the Kessin? Which means turn around and place the wall, right? So what's that? That's a conflict of act. But is that a real conflict? No, the conflict is deeper. The conflict is, should I get up and go to the Minyan, because that is the will of God. Because His will is greater than mine, or His will supersedes mine. Or should I go back to sleep and do my will? So it's a battle of will, right? The conflict of will. So the first conflict is the act itself. The second conflict is the conflict of will. Whose will dominates? But then there's a third level of conflict. What is that? Should I get up for Minyan and do His will? Because His will supersedes mine. Because Ein Od Milvado, His will is the only will. Or should I remain sleeping, act, and because I want to do my will, because Yesh Od Milvado, besides God, there's also me. You see. So when you get up, what's the greatest, how do you testify? Or rather, what exactly is the testimony? So the testimony is Einay Mavado Yesheg Mavado. Clearly then, what determines how much testimony you gave? The answer is effort. Because the more difficult something is, and you overcome it, there's a greater testimony of Einay Mavado. You see? So if Einay Mavado is where it's at, and the effort is the giloi, or the determinant of how much Einay Mavado you did, then therefore lefum tsar agra. That's why. So it is the effort that determines the amount of testimony of Einay Mavado, and therefore the reward depends on Einay Mavado, because we know Midah Keneged Midah. If you declare Einay Mavado, the reward in Einay Mahabo is Einay Mavado. It's really what it is.
It's more than the mice itself?
Yes. Yeah. Well, because the mice, if you think about it, the act itself is really the repercussions of the effort. The key thing, what is Olam Haba the real experience? What are you really experiencing in Olam Haba? Really, that Einay Mavado. That besides God, there's nothing else. You are experiencing the greatest type of contact with God as the only thing that exists altogether. And therefore that's a Midah Keneged Midah. The more you experience Einay Mavado, which is the amount of effort, and that determines the intensity of the Eidus, the greater will be your reward in Olam Haba, because Olam Haba is the experience of Einay Mavado. You see? That's why from Tsara Agra, according to the effort, the Tsar is the reward, because the greater the Tsar, the greater is the denial of self, is the greater the expression of Einay Mavado, and the Agra is Einay Mavado. There you are, see? That's why. That's why in the end, what God wants is the effort. Of course the effort will lead to success, but is the effort that is the giloi of how much you are testifying Einay Mavado. Interesting.
Same thing happens with Averas, right? Kashe Hivu Avera.
Well, the Avera is the opposite. When you do an Avera, you are declaring Yesheg Mavado. Because I can do what I want, it's my will, I do what I want. So therefore, that diminishes the amount of Einay Mavado that you experience. And therefore, that will diminish the amount of Olam Haba you experience. You see, it's a Midah Keneged Midah kind of thing. That is why Einay Mavado is the classic mechanism or goal that you want to reach. And really it says, it says Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, right? Hear Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And we know that the last letter of Shema is Ayin, the last letter of Echad is Dalet, and they're large. Why? Because it spells out aid. Because that's really what it is. You need to testify that the Baruch Shem is an Echad. And what happens if you testify that the Baruch Shem is an Echad? Then read it backwards. Dalet Ayin is Da. You will know that. You see? If you're an aid that Einay Mavado Echad, then Dalet Ayin, reverse it. Dalet Ayin is Da. That's exactly what you will know, because that's the experience of Olam Haba. You see? Perfectly logical. That's why from Tsara Agra, the amount of reward is based basically on the amount of effort. And that's why you can never judge anybody, because you don't know the effort. You can see the accomplishment, but you never know what the guy put into it. You see, that's why a guy who's in shul, two guys could be davening next to each other, yes? And one guy's reward could be 1,000 times greater than the other guy's reward. Why? Because one guy's reward depends on how much effort he had to expend to get up in the morning to go to shul. You see, not only that, maybe he had to walk. He had to walk, 15 blocks or whatever. Whereas the other guy is right next door. You see, you can't measure effort. That's why it's impossible to know really the spiritual level of another person. And what's interesting is that even if it's not a mitzvah, or rather even if you fail, what happens if you want to do a mitzvah, you put your effort into it, it never happened. So what happens? Well, we would think that, hey, you missed out. You didn't do the mitzvah, so what do you want? But if the actual deed itself isn't the reward, really, because that's not the statement of Ein Madoi. The statement is really what? The effort. Then it doesn't make a difference if you don't accomplish your goal. Isn't that interesting? That it doesn't make a difference.
You won't get the schar of the mitzvah.
No, you will. The schar of the mitzvah is not dependent on success. It's dependent on your gear, effort. Because that is the testimony of Ein Muvadoi. You see, it's an interesting idea. So if a guy, let's say a guy is killing himself to understand, let's say to learn Torah, and he's killing himself to understand Torah, right? And in the end, he couldn't figure it out. He just didn't get it for whatever reason, right? But the effort itself is the reward. Because the essence of the Ein Muvadoi testimony is the effort, not the success. That's why it says, Hema Meinim Vanachna Meinim. What does that mean? They work and we work. They work and they don't get schar for Yamenis. We do. Why? Because their job is to know or to be successful, not to declare Ein Muvadoi. Whereas our job is to do what? Is to declare Ein Muvadoi. So what's the difference if we're successful or not? Of course we want to be successful, right? Of course we do. But the reward is not based on success or failure. It is based on your efforts.
So does that mean theoretically somebody...
It's a very important nakuda, and I'm explaining why. Because the essence of Olam Haba is Gilu Yechudoi and Hasagas Yechudoi, to experience God, to be masik who He is, and that is dependent on what? On testimony, and the measure of the testimony is the effort.
You're saying it's theoretically possible for somebody in a later generation to have an Olam Haba on par with the others.
Correct. Exactly. It's astounding, isn't it? Yeah. Imagine a guy's born, and his father happens to be the Gadol Hador, right? And so, what does it take for him to do a mitzvah? On the contrary, if he doesn't do the mitzvah, he get reprimanded and all that. Another guy's born, right, to some people, parents who are fried, and they're always discouraging him, and he says, I don't care, and he goes against his parents' wishes, the society, the community, all to do the Ratzon HaBorei. Who's greater? Interesting. Everybody would say, well, the other guy, because take a look, It's like the Vilna Gaon used to say, we are amazed at the Vilna Gaon. There's no question about that. He was an amazing individual, But the Vilna Gaon himself said once, hey, what's the problem here? Who am I? I'm really zero. My head is all purely a gift of God. It's not because I am the Vilna Gaon. It's because He made me the Vilna Gaon. What a difference. So he said, Ein moinim dapim elashos. They don't count blot. If you're going to count blot, hands down, he won. Right? He won. He finished Vochem Menachas in one night. We look if we finish Vochem Menachas in 5 years. So we would figure he won, and that's the end of it. What can you do? And the answer is no. They really couldn't care less how many blot he finished. They count how many hours he spent. And the hours is the effort. You see, that's why it's possible for somebody in this door to be greater than the Rishonim Niachboinu. I'm not saying that it was easy for them, don't get me wrong. But the Baruch Hashem knows the emes. He will see that if a person is truly a Yagea, right, and he can measure the Yagea, we can't, right? He will say this person is much greater than that person, Now, if you want to know how great are we, right? Everybody here needs a boost. Yes, we all need a boost, right?
There's a musical machshava teva Kosh Baruch Hu mitzaref al ha'maisa.
Yeah.
But that's a special limud that machshava teva, since whatever, at least Yidden are rottenness to do good, so even if we didn't do it, the Efshah is mitzaref. But it doesn't automatically mean that every Giyah has in it schar. If you did it, with the mitzvah you'll get the full schar. But not every Yigiyah by itself is a schar, but it's not going to be the schar of a mitzvah.
No, because each one entails effort. Even the mitzvah entails
But
effort.
he's saying even if you go effort.
No.
He's saying it's a nice
The question is, what do you? No. What do you get? No. If you apply Yigiyah, what do you get? The Yigiyah applied to what?
To the mitzvah. Let's say you did a Yigiyah with a mitzvah. You get a mitzvah with a certain amount of Yigiyah.
Yeah.
Right. But
But
let's
you
say
don't-
you didn't do a mitzvah,
You
then you get a certain amount of Yigiyah. You don't get the mitzvah. Unless there's a din that they shouldn't start the mitzvah to Lamaisa.
Because the machshava is the mitzvah. There's two components to a mitzvah. There's his machshava and his maisa. So therefore, each one will have a certain amount of yigiyah. You see? Let's say a person has a machshava, and all of a sudden he gets a thought, it can't be true. And then he has to sit and think, wait a minute, is it true? That's yigiyah for a certain machshava. Now, whether he did that maisa or not doesn't make a difference. Machshava in and of itself is a mitzvah, independent of a maisa.
Right, but let's say he wants to go daven.
Yeah,
But he wanted to go daven a minyan, and there was no minyan.
yeah.
So unless he didn't do it, but he wanted to go down minyan. So now, does he get schar like he down with the minyan?
Yes. Yeah.
That's because of the din of machshav mitzvah for Lamaisa.
Yeah.
But is there any other dimensions, such as aros or other dimensions, which we only get?
I'm not talking about fault. I'm not talking about fault.
And nothing to do with fault. It's not a matter of
I'm
fault.
not talking about fault.
The question is what is.
Right.
Nothing to do with fault. Look, obviously, but you understand. Wait. If a person wants to daven, so he will get that's a mitzvah in itself.
Right.
Now, if a person does daven, then that's another mitzvah.
Right.
It's almost like, so therefore you measure the yigiyah of that mitzvah. The Rebbe will determine what mitzvahs you can do.
There's certain rules that have a din of machshav b'tayva. The cholesterol is not a tayva.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So let's say by goyim, we know the rule is by goyim, they don't have machshav b'tayva mitzvah for Lamaisa. So they won't get the schar of the machshav b'tayva. They'll get only if they do. But there's still a yigiyah that they put in when they do, they'll get it. And if they don't do, they won't get it.
Who says they get scar for Yigiyah? Well, you get scar for Yigiyah.
There's certain yigiyah that
Why not?
Why not?
That's the measure.
it takes. It's
I want to tell you something. You have to one thing with the Moshe. He doesn't want to fool us. Look, it's like the ain't a Kodesh Baruch Hu b'Ketrunya. The Moshe doesn't come like, hey, I fooled you. He doesn't do that kind of stuff. You spent half your life, you got nowhere. The Moshe doesn't. He's not out to betray or to deceive us. He's honest. He says, if you really did it, you deserve it. Now what's the problem here, It's not that I have to spend money giving you it. To me, I just create the reward. It's not like, okay, I have to write out a check now. I don't want to give it to you guys. It's coming out of my bank account. You know what I'm saying? The Russian bank account is infinite. So the truth is, you have to understand that, Chazal. Why? Why is it if a guy wants to do a mitzvah and he doesn't, why shouldn't he be rewarded? Because thinking itself is an incredibly good thing, whether you did it or not. You have to understand that, Chazal, because it seems to be connected justice,
so that's what I'm saying.
or it's connected the goodness of the Rebbe
The
Shalom.
simple thing is that a goy will get schar for the thought, but not for the mitzvah. That's where the chiluk is. A yid will get schar for the mitzvah itself, besides the effort, and a goy won't get schar for the mitzvah, but will get schar for the thought. That he will get.
Why wouldn't you get schar for the mitzvah?
And they give what reasons. They say, the simple reason they say it is because a guy usually doesn't do good things. So for him to do it, he has to break it, and we don't see the break. We don't see him doing it. A yid, we see him doing the rotten type. That's the simple reason they give. But that shows there's a chiluk.
But the guy did it.
So if he didn't do it, they both didn't do it.
Anyway, so that's the concept, which is very important. Why, if the reward is really based on the effort, because that's the testimony of Einod Mavadoi. I want to give you the good news. So where do we stand?
Boost the ego.
Where do we stand? What's that?
He said boost.
Boost. Here's the boost. Rabbi Yisrael Mirvision says the following. He made two incredible statements. He said that the Nisoyin today is so great, okay, that it is as great as, I don't remember if he said it is as great or greater, I don't recall which one, but either way, it's incredible. Let's assume it's as great as Akedas Yitzchak is. Yes, it's beyond belief. And we have been collecting from Akedas Yitzchak for the last 4,000 years. He said that in the Ikvus of the Mashiach, the En Bachus HaYomim, the difficulty of doing a mitzvah will be so great that it will be equal to, I'm not sure if it was equal to or greater, but let's assume equal to, it will be equal to the Akedas Yitzchak, which is beyond belief. Yes. That means every mitzvah you do is equal to Avram Avinu's Akedas Yitzchak. Now that is something to write home about, as they say, It's beyond belief, yeah. But he also says, why is that?
To do with B'Shleimus.
B'Shleimus Ahin, B'Shleimus Aher.
You did it.
You did it.
Yeah, you did it.
Yeh Lishma, Yish Lishma, you did it, The question is why. So he made another statement. He said, what will be the Nisoyin in the end of time? He says, this is a Nisoyin. Remember there was a story between Eliyahu and by the Nevi'ei Baal? It's famous, right? Where he had the Nevi'ei Baal. So fun. Eliyahu always says, listen, how long are you going to switch them back and forth? Come on. Either they're right or either their God is Baal or our God. How long have we what do you call it? Stay safe from here. It's okay, here's the great test, right? So he went up to Har HaKarmel, right? And he has two korbanos, right? One is the Baal, the Nevi'ei Baal, the guys from Baal, and the one was our Nevi'im, and it was just Eliyahu. And so he says, okay, you guys go first, right? And they were screaming all day, and they're cutting themselves, that's what they do, and so on, so, so finally Eliyahu, and they couldn't bring down nothing, And meanwhile, one of the guys tried to come under the light of fire. It was Midrashim, and a snake bit him and he dropped dead. Whatever, obviously they were desperate, and they were cutting themselves because that's what they go, those Baal, part of it is to cut yourself to show the Mesiras Nefesh. What?
Scarification.
Scarification?
They do it in Africa now and it's happening in America.
Is that to show the Mesiras Nefesh? Or how much the world to go through?
It's a spiritual thing for
Yeah, so Eliyahu finally looked at them. And he said to them, hey guys, cut it out. Anyway, that was a joke, by the way. Those guys were slow. So he said, okay, so obviously he was Mispal, was Korban Mincha, and all of a sudden a lightning bolt came down, consumed the animal, the Mizbeach, everything. Thank God it didn't consume our Carmel, but it did. Anyway, so that was it. Okay, so obviously then they all said, Hashem will Kim, whatever, and so on and so forth. So the Yisroel Mauritian says this. He says, could you imagine if Eliyahu is being mispal, right? And the lightning bolt comes down not on his korban, but on Baal's korban. So, right? He said, hey, what's going on here? I thought God is on my side. What I'm saying? He said, that's the type of nisayon where it will seem as if the Rebbe Shalom is aiding and abetting and sponsoring the Rishoyim, not us, and that he is completely arrayed against Klal Yisrael. Now, go do a mitzvah in that time.
That's the bottom.
Of an unbelievable degree. So you could begin to understand what that means, and then you could also begin to understand, so therefore that type of nisayon, where your God that is supposed to defend your rights, right, he's on your side, is actually seems to be on their side, right, and he's against you. So that's like what's called the ultimate betrayal, you see. So therefore, since that is the type of nisayon in Akros HaYomim, the reward will be beyond measure. If you don't, now why is it compared to Akedas Yitzchak? Because think about it, Akedas Yitzchak was also betrayal. How are you going to kill your son? What do you mean? He's the guy that's supposed to carry on. A Yiddish guy, the Moshe says, kill him? That is such a backward step for Avram Avinu, He finally had a kid. I mean, how old was he, Whatever, it was 100, whatever, 36, whatever, so right? 99 years, he finally has a kid that's going to carry on. And Avram Avinu wasn't just a child that gave him such a tremendous nachas. was that he was into the Rebbe Shalom, totally. That finally I have a child that will bring a nachas ruch to the Rebbe Shalom. Right? L'man yitzav bon of Achrov. That he will command his children after him. Right? And Avraham Avinu's kavanah wasn't that, wow, I finally have a kid after 99 years. Right? It's where I finally have somebody that can serve God. And Mekayim the Ratzon HaBorei, this is what his machshava is. That's the machshava of tzaddik. Right? And all of a sudden the Rebbe says to him, excuse me, you got to kill him? That is such a backward step. With the Rebbe clearly saying, I don't want this. You know, what do you mean you don't want this? This is the whole point, right? And therefore, that's what the Rishna says. So therefore, the amount of schar is unparalleled in human history, you see. Because the nisoyin that we go through is beyond belief. Beyond belief. Truth is, if you took any of the Gedolim, I think, in my opinion, if you took any of Gedolim today, not today, if you any of the Gedolim that lived a couple hundred years ago, right, and you took them and said, okay, and you brought them back in Gilgal, right, and you said to them, you know, you need to go get a job. Why don't you go and get a job on Wall Street? He would commit suicide. You know what the nisyonos are to work on Wall Street? Between the preachers and the complete immersion in money and gashmis. I mean, you don't even, after a while you become inured of this. But if you really think about it, it's beyond belief what the nisyonos are. In working in Manhattan, or going outside anyway, even in sometime in whatever, and I'd say Lakewood, but it's beyond belief, you know. I remember, what's his name? I think it was Chatzkel Levenstein. You know, so I think he came to America. Was it him? I think it was him. You know, he was thinking when he from me or something, he came to America. He was thinking of settling down, and he got out of I think they drove him for some type of, I don't remember exactly, but you know, in Manhattan, he got out of his car. He took one look at the place, and he jumped back in his car. Take me to Israel. You know, he was out of here. You know. Because you could lose your entire Ilam Hazeh, you know, in 5 minutes in Manhattan.
Cell phones also.
We cannot grasp the danger to our religion walking around outside. Or even in your house. The amount of Yetzer Haras and so on and so forth is beyond belief, you know. So therefore, anybody who remains from, does mitzvahs, tries to hold on, as they say, is Akedas Yitzchak. Now, it's hard for us to believe that, you know. But a Jew that does basic mitzvahs today, you know, he remains Elach, you know, Tas Mishpacha, Kashrus, Yom Tov, and all that, today, is probably greater than the Rishonim, you know, because they didn't have to contend with this nonsense. You know, it was a whole different life, and certainly people who lived 2,000 years ago in the time of the Rishonim. I mean, Tanoim and Amram and so on. We don't know that. Because we cannot, and that's also part of it, that's part of the effort. Part of the effort determines what? Is the nisoyin we're exposed to. So the effort to not to be swallowed up by the nisoyinus is beyond belief. So that's what the Rishna says, that a Jew today is equal to that Akedas Yitzchak.
There was a rabbi that said generations ago, for the youth, talking about the prominent youth now, the Derech, that, you know, everyone, all Jews live together, and for someone to hear things that were wrong, see things or do things that were wrong, they'd have to travel, and it wasn't safe for them to go to those non-Jewish parts of the country.
Yeah.
And they were discouraged because of the travel.
Yeah.
Now a kid can be sitting on his porch with a cell phone, and tap in any kind of music, any type of image, and find out anything that's going on nearby, and it's right in front of it. It's in their hand, right there.
Sure. Yeah. In a certain sense, I believe. My personal opinion is that the nisyonos of the internet will destroy the Jews. It's just too great. Even with all the protests and all that stuff, It'll affect, hopefully a lot of people and so on. But really, in the end, all those people who are fry, they're finished. The internet is global connectivity, but it is so destructive that you cannot withstand it. It's like the Gemara says, you take a guy, put him next to a brothel, give him cash, and dress him up. He's finished. The odds of him surviving is beyond, even a bookie wouldn't take his odds in Las Vegas, and believe me, take a lot of odds, that the internet is such a destructive device. And I'm not just talking about the pornographic stuff. They say more than 50% of the people who go on the internet is really for pornography. Don't fool yourself, it's for nothing else, But I'm not even talking about those guys. But the social networking, Facebook and Twitter, there are people who spend all day on it. And then there are text messaging. There are people who cannot live without their cell phone next to them while they sleep. Because God forbid somebody's going to text them and they have to immediately be able to answer. You ever go on a plane or a train or something like that? You know what everybody's doing? What's the universal pose?
Yes.
It's just like, that's it, there's no more contact with the outside world. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's this. And everybody's playing around with their smartphone. And this is now, it's going to get much worse as time goes on because it's going to be connected. So it is my personal opinion that Judaism basically is doomed. I don't mean from the Fruma. Even for the Fruma it's terrible. But from those guys who have left Yiddishkeit, for the whole world in general, it's over with. Because the Yetzer Hara of the internet is beyond the capacity of a person to stand it. So the only way a person can survive is you cannot have the internet at all. And if you do, it's got to be Sheva. It has to have so many, now forget the filters. It has to have, it's like, Apitropos Larayas, It's like a guy's with a woman in the room, how do you know, right? So you give him a god. But how do you know the god? Maybe the god also joined the guy, right? Then he needs a god. He needs a god. Like the 14,000 gods. And they're all subject to the same Nisayan. Same idea, You can have filter on filter and filter. It doesn't make a difference. Either the way is not to have the internet, or if you need it, to have the computer in a public place. And then you have to worry because maybe the guy wants to stay overtime when nobody's around, everybody's home, and then they play around with the internet. You can't massy what that device is. It's incredible. So therefore, I believe that the internet is an unbelievable. That's the bad part, that we are finished. The good part is that because we're finished, the Moshe has to come and save us, which means the Gula. That the device called the internet is so dangerous, and renders a person so helpless that the Moshe will only bring that Nisayan at the end of time. My belief, my opinion.
Basically, this is what separates the men from the boys.
What?
The internet is the one that will just make the head all big.
Yeah, but it is, like I say, it is a device that is so destructive, there is no antidote to the internet. The only antidote is either not to have it, or to have it in a place that it's not possible to do anything with it other than legitimate business. But even with that, it doesn't make a difference.
Could you quite that of the Avodah Zorah in the more ancient times, the type of Avodah Zorah is the same type of. The type to the neshama of Avodah Zorah is the same as the type of the internet to the goof.
It's very strong.
No, all the internet does.
Now a person gets destroyed completely.
Yeah.
Kids take too
What
long.
the internet does, the destructive force.
My father is a Rav in a small town.
Yeah, in France.
In France, he told me that since the internet, even the Fry congregants who used to call him to know like the date of a yard site, what time is candle lighting, just like basic contact with the rabbi, is all gone.
Wow.
I mean, nobody calls
Nobody
anymore.
calls anymore. Everybody feels whatever they need, they can find on the internet.
Yeah.
And there's no contact.
Yeah.
It's like there's no way to catch them.
Yeah, yeah.
Any
Because there's no interaction.
There's no interaction.
Yeah, it's over with, you know. But I was going to say, what the internet has done, I mean, it has done many things. But one of the things why the internet is so destructive is because it has made available anything you want. And you have every person has tivus and so on and so forth. It hasn't increased your tivus. What it has done, it has made it everything available. So why not? You know, like this, a guy used to have to think 4 times if he wanted to go someplace to do an avera. But there's no problem anymore. Just get on your cell phone. And it used to be you need a computer. There's no computer anymore. Today you just walk on a smartphone and it's all there. So the good news is that the only time the Rosh will allow the internet to exist is right before Mashiach comes.
Why are we being
That's how bad it is.
Why are we being tested so heavily like that?
What?
Why are we being tested so heavily like that? That's the only way to bring the gula?
Because the internet really, what the internet is really all about, it is a device for the Mashiach. That's what it is. An internet is an incredible device. It's called global connectivity. There are certain things that are being developed. I believe that's why it has grown. Because the Mashiach ben Yosef is going to come on Yedei Teva. I'm going to tell you the ruchnis of this. Mashiach ben Yosef is going to come on Yedei Teva. Means naturally. Right? So if he's going to come naturally, there has to be a natural way for him to promote his message, which is the Orishan. Right? How is he going to do that? Right? We're talking naturally. We're not talking about miraculous.
I can't picture like
What?
Google ad like that careful.
Yeah, the eyes are right?
The chef.
Yeah. No, won't be Mashiach website. So therefore, what is interesting is that there are two things that allow Mashiach to promote or to bring the redemption teva-wise, and that's the internet. Why? Because the internet, number one, is global connectivity. Number one, and number two, that's why there is an internet. By the way, so of course. The real reason why it's here is, I believe, because it is the natural way Mashiach ben Yosef can contact everybody. That's number one. Number two, right? So
How do you
therefore,
do that if it's so full of tumah?
Wait. Hold up. I'm into overtime now. No, because it answers why we have it. So we have it for that. So therefore, he will be able to contact and give his shiurim, whatever he does, right, over to the entire mankind. Because everybody's got a computer now, and now it's on a smartphone. That means everybody is reachable by the Mashiach. Number one. Number two, like you say, wait a minute, what about those people who live in the Mojave Desert? Can't reach them, and the answer is no. That's why the concept of wireless has grown. So therefore, today it's possible where a guy lives in Hudson Klutz, in Arkansas. A guy lives in he lives in the Himalayas somewhere, and he'll be able to what? The guys sit up there without electricity. It's all wireless. That's why batteries, wireless, and internet exists, because so he can broadcast ruchnius. Now forget about why would anybody listen to him, because he's going to have his own website. You know what I'm saying? He's going to have to be on Twitter, Facebook, Hidabrut, I'm not, forget about that. That's a different story, All I'm saying is that Mashiach ben Yosef is a Mashiach that deals with teva, natural. And therefore the internet, which is global connectivity, together with batteries, together with wireless, that's why. And I believe also that's why Bill Gates, who is responsible for an enormous amount of standardization of the internet and so on, that's why Moshe made him so wealthy. Now, I don't know why he was the guy chosen. I don't know, because you have to know who he was. His Gilgul Neshama, whatever that is. But I do know why there's one guy. Because committees never get anything done. So if there were committees to standardize, all the protocol of the internet, would never have got done. So the Moshe said, okay, you're the guy. So he's one guy, he has a ton of money, and Google now. And so these guys are able to, one guy to revolutionize the whole, what's called communications. That's really what the internet is about. It is a communications device that can transform a world because of batteries, wireless, and in real time. You can have Skype, you can have diagrams, you can do whatever you want on the internet, and people can learn the Ruchnius in real time. Oh, that's the real device. So the Rosh Hashanah has come and he announced in front of his Bezdin, Rabbi Sai, now's the time. We need a device that will begin to grow, that is the ultimate communications device, and will have everybody connected. Right? So the Malach, so the Sultan says, excuse me. This is probably an actual conversation that took place. The Sultan said, excuse me, you want to do this? It's not fair. They're not royal for this. They're not zurcha for this. Come on. So Bonsham said, and this is what's called Sheikhah the Sultan. He says, no, I understand. Al-Bidin really, it can't happen. But you know what I'll do? You get it first. You get it first. It's yours. So the Sultan says,
won the lottery.
Right? What?
You won the lottery.
Well, it's yours. This, by the way, is what's called Sheikhah the Sultan. Because the problem is the Sultan comes up there, Al-Bidin. That's how he wins. He doesn't say, I won, who are you? But he says, Al-Bidin, this cannot be. Because they're not zurcha to this. So Sheikhah the Sultan, it means that the Barsham pacifies, appeases justice. So he said, okay, it's got to come down. Sorry. However, you get it first. No problem. By the time I get through with mankind, they're going to be fit to be tied. And all of a sudden, there it comes, right? There it comes. This twist, or what do you call it? Not twist. Twitter and Facebook and all the pornography, you name it. And all the, because remember, the internet is not only Tumah, it's unbelievable about Bittul Torah, or Bittul Zman. I mean, everybody's on the internet all day long. And so on. And it has created enormous havoc with clients from. And everybody, so that's the Sheikhah the Sultan. You get it first. So the good news is that the internet is here for messianic purposes. I realize there are people out there that will disagree with me. However, they are wrong. That's why it's here. Just like the telephone is the same concept, because it also has a lot of tum on the phone. But there are reasons, because the Baruch wants to increase the communications in mankind, all right? So since part of the messianic era will be Teva, it has to be. And that's but the Baruch said it's yours first. The same thing, two other fundamental phenomena occurred the same way. And there's more. Eretz Yisrael had to go back to the Jews. You see. So the Sultan said, wait a minute, Eretz Yisrael has to go back to the Jews. They don't deserve Eretz Yisrael. So Baruch says, no, it's got to come. So what was the Sultan going to say? So the Baruch had to mafias din, justice. Because he was right. So Baruch says, okay, it's going to come. You guys go first. All of a sudden, who originates the idea? Herzl. I don't even know if the guy was reformed. I don't know if he believed in God. I don't know what he was. But all of a sudden, he's the one who suggested this, the concept of Eretz Yisrael. And then who's the one who got it first? Mapai, Maskilim. And so all these guys got it first. And that was the deal. You see? And the Sultan said, fine. By the time I get rid of these guys, it's great. That's another phenomenon that happened, Sheikhah the Sultan. And the third phenomenon that happened is what? It's Kabbalah. The Baruch said the ore of Kabbalah has to begin to come down. So the Sultan says, Kabbalah? You want to give him this? You want to give him the Hasogas of Einei Mavadoi, of the Ruchnis Tigolamas, to these people? The Baruch says, yes, the time has arrived, and the Baruch has his cheshbonos. But then the Sultan has his cheshbonos. Why it's not right. So to Mafias the Din, Sheikhah the Sultan, the Baruch says, okay, you get it first. Who's first? All the Hollywood stars that are into Kabbalah, right? And all the other guys trying to promote this, selling holy water, selling Zoyas to Goyim. You all know who that is, and I want to say, and so on, right? And so on. All these guys that are being mavazer, this kind of Torah, the Orishim, these Hasogas, Kedusha, and so on, they get it first. That's why if you want to improve your Kabbalistic understanding, you need to call Madonna. She's
Esther now.
Oh, she's Esther.
Into Esther.
Oh, Esther?
Esther, yeah.
Esther.
You know where the red
Yeah, okay. Well, all the Hollywood stars, you know, you got to go to, whatever place that, this is called Sheikhad Satan. But the reason why they came down is not for Nisoyan. It's Sheikhad Satan is what allows the Satan to use them first. But the reason why they came down, like Eretz Yisrael, obviously for Eretz Yisrael, Kabbalah, because that's the Zman demands that they begin to be introduced to a high hasaga. Right? And you have the internet because that is an incredible communications device. That can be used for unbelievable kedusha. The problem is, obviously, is that the Satan gets it first, and that's why it's destroying. But like I said, so the good news is that it's here, but like I say, it is so destructive that the Jews don't have a chance against it. Really? That's what's going to happen, and so on. In any case, so these are some of the ideas.
Question, Rabbi Kessin. My understanding of the Malachim is that they're in a fixed place, they don't move unless Hashem grants them to move. They're fixed, they're singing praises to Hashem.
Yeah.
Would you say that the Satan has the probably most evolved interaction with Hashem, the most will to speak and move about freely above all the other?
He's in charge of Dinah. Yeah, he's in charge of Dinah. So as such, he's... Next week, 8:45. By the way, for those who missed, I gave a half-hour rendition. People missed. You can get on the internet. Get it on.
In the right direction.
The website.